Russian warships in inland waters have always been deemed secure. That has long been the Kremlin's assessment. Yet the Black Sea presents an entirely different scenario. Russian vessels there have repeatedly fallen under Ukrainian fire, and now, armed with unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, and missiles, Ukraine has rendered such strikes almost predictable for Russia. But could an assault on a Russian ship unfold beyond contested waters? Critical error. Ukraine has just executed a stunning long-range strike, stripping Russia of one of its most modern warships. President Putin's naval forces now confront their inability to mount effective defenses against Ukraine's distant assaults, as one vessel was hit squarely in a zone Russia regarded as safe. But before delving into today's core analysis, drop a comment with number 1 if you back Ukraine, number 2 if you stand with Russia, or number 3 if you remain neutral. Now, let's pivot back to the substance of this report. According to a United 24 report dated October 4, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, SSO, employed a long-range weapon to score a direct hit on Russia's Grad corvette. This missile corvette of the Buyan-M class boasts advanced guided missile systems that Vladimir Putin was eager to deploy in the Black Sea. But Grad will never reach there, or anywhere else, after Ukraine struck it from an astonishing distance of nearly 1,000 kilometers, or about 620 miles, measured from its own border. The Russian ship lay anchored in waters presumed secure on Lake Onega, in Russia's northwestern republic of Karelia, when the attack unfolded. Moscow could never have anticipated this. While Ukraine has notched successes against Russian oil refineries in recent months, those targets stood large and stationary, prime for airstrikes. But what of a ship? A missile corvette is supposed to maneuver and evade distant threats. This should not have been possible, yet it happened, and the SSO gleefully announced its triumph to the world. On Telegram, following the strike on Grad, the SSO offered further details. At 4:31 a.m. on October 4, 2025, thanks to the successful operation of a Special Operations Forces unit, the small missile ship Grad, Project 21631 Buyan-M, hull number 575, was struck on Lake Onega in the Republic of Karelia. This early morning assault targeted no idle vessel. Grad was operational and underway. The SSO added, this missile carrier was en route from the Baltic to the Caspian Sea. The strike hit the starboard engine compartment. Further details are being clarified. The attack achieved pinpoint accuracy, zeroing in on the propulsion system and crippling the ship's mobility on the spot. One might wonder why Ukraine targeted a vessel bound for a sea not directly tied to the Ukrainian conflict. Grad packed missiles, yet its potential to inflict severe damage on Ukraine from such remote waters remained low. Perhaps this was less about neutralizing a threat and more about delivering a message to Russia. We possess long-range weapons and can destroy some of your most valuable naval assets from hundreds of kilometers away. That signal extends beyond Moscow to potential adversaries elsewhere, underscoring Ukraine's growing military prowess. This marks no first for Ukraine striking Russian ships near the Caspian Sea. On August 14, Ukraine hit Russia's cargo vessel Port Olia 4 at a range of about 640 kilometers, or nearly 400 miles. The assault sparked fires that partially sank the ship but left it afloat. Ukraine required no total submersion, as this strike may have tested tactics refined a month and a half later in operations aimed at severing Russia's military supply lines. Downing Grad likely pursues similar aims while denying the Russian Navy one of its newest assets. In theory, Grad outshone most other Russian ships in condition.
The vessel mounts Kalibr-NK guided missile systems, Oniks anti-ship missiles, and possibly even Tsirkon hypersonic missiles. With a displacement of about 949 tons, a top speed of 25 knots, and a crew of roughly 52 sailors. Putin may have eyed it for Black Sea duty, or Grad could have been bound for the Caspian to resupply before returning to the Baltic, where it might menace Ukraine's European allies. The details remain unclear, but they no longer matter, as Grad is likely knocked out of action. Unverified sources suggest the ship sank outright after the hit, though Russia has yet to confirm.
The strike's most striking feature is the distance Ukraine's weapon covered to nail Grad. That prompts the obvious question: what armament did Ukraine deploy? The SSO withheld specifics, likely to deny Russia insight into how Ukraine pulled off the raid. The less Moscow knows, the harder it becomes to counter future repeats. Still, Ukraine's arsenal holds just two viable options for such a feat: drones and missiles. A drone-delivered long-range strike emerges as the SSO's most plausible tool against Grad, especially given Ukraine's stockpile of extended-range unmanned aerial vehicles. Ukraine fields drones capable of ranges around 1,000 kilometers. Ukraine's Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhailo Fedorov, confirmed as much in April 2024 after a spate of Ukrainian drone raids on Russian refineries. He stated, "Most drones hitting Russian oil refineries have ranges from 700 to 1,000 kilometers, but models now exceed 1,000 kilometers." Fedorov skipped specifics on models but noted 10 Ukrainian firms produce and refine these long-range drones. Those companies have made strides in streamlining designs and boosting strike capabilities, helping Ukraine sustain its tactical edge. One Ukrainian drone confirmed in use around Fedorov's remarks is the UJ-26 Beaver, also known as Bober. This pusher-tailed, slender fuselage design with forward wings resembles a shrunken commercial airliner. It reaches about 1,000 kilometers in range, though its 20-kilogram, about 44-pound, payload falls short of Ukraine's top performers. The Beaver packs advanced guidance for precision hits on moving targets. Debuted in 2023, it has struck Moscow and deep Russian sights. Grad may claim the latest Beaver victim. Another contender is the Liutyi, which Vikram Mittal described in an August 2024 Forbes piece as Ukraine's riposte to Russia's Shahed drone. The Liutyi operates at least 1,000 kilometers, with upgrades doubling that span. It hauls nearly 4 times the Beaver's payload, around 75 kilograms, and at an estimated $200,000 per unit, proves economical enough for Ukraine to risk on distant warship hunts. Its punch showed in downing 80% of targeted Russian refineries by mid-2024. The Liutyi sports a high-explosive warhead potent enough to ravage warships or infrastructure alike. Ultimately, the exact drone, or if it was a drone at all, remains unknown. Yet Ukraine clearly mass-produces these long-range variants. Militarny confirmed in July 2024 via President Volodymyr Zelensky's remarks, "We have truly ramped up drone output." Their ranges now top 1,000 kilometers, with some hitting 1,200 and 1,300 kilometers. But remember, these are drones, and their punch lags far behind missiles. Speaking of missiles, that forms Ukraine's second viable path. Western missiles lay outside the SSO's October 4 options against Grad, as the US would never greenlight ATACMS use near the Caspian, and Britain likely shares qualms over Storm Shadow. Anyway, neither reaches far enough. ATACMS tops out at about 300 kilometers,
Storm Shadow at 560 kilometers, both short of the 1,000-kilometer mark.
Still, since Russia's invasion, Ukraine has forged an impressive defense industry, yielding missiles fit for such strikes. Prime suspect, the Long Neptune, an upgraded take on Ukraine's R-360 Neptune. The Long Neptune spans 1,000 to 3,000 kilometers. It blends inertial and GPS guidance with a 150-kilogram, about 330-pound, warhead ample for shipwrecking damage. Moreover, the base R-360 is the cruise missile Ukraine wielded to sink Russian vessels in the Black Sea. Though tuned for land strikes, the Long Neptune diverges little from its anti-ship kin, per Ukraine's Crisis Media Center. The report notes, the nose and tail stay unchanged, wings and tail surfaces expand, likely to balance the heavier takeoff weight. With tweaks so minor, the Long Neptune could well sink Russian ships like the R-360 Neptune. If so, Ukraine's silence on this forms a strategic edge, leaving Russia to speculate and struggle with countermeasures. Veiling the weapon type ranks as shrewd tactics, preserving surprise for future ops.
Ukraine's noteworthy newcomer, the Flamingo, a drone cruise missile hybrid per Missile Matters, also merits scrutiny, with a reach up to 3,000 kilometers, matching the Long Neptune's max. Yet Flamingo packs more wallop via a 1.15-ton payload for a devastating blow. It handles versatile strikes on sea or land targets with real-time guidance tweaks. Perhaps kill for a small missile corvette posing no direct Ukrainian threat. That tilts both missiles as less likely than Ukraine's drones. Range fits, but amid wartime asset optimization, opting for cheap drones over pricey missiles makes sense, reserving missiles for Russian refineries or enemy troop hubs in Ukraine. Drones let Ukraine stretch resources while curbing financial exposure on far-flung missions. The sole certainty. The SSO stayed mum on its tool, zeroing in on the freshly struck prize. The SSO declared on Telegram, Grad is among the newest and most advanced ships of the Russian Federation, commissioned to Russia's Baltic Fleet on December 29, 2022. Its primary armament is the Kalibr-NK missile system. These two facts carry weight. First, on freshness. Grad joins Russia's latest naval batch, as its shipyards grapple with Western sanctions stalling new builds. Second, spotlighting Grad's main weapon may explain Ukraine's pick, beyond signaling long-range reach and hits on Moscow's cutting-edge hulls. The Kalibr-NK, or 3M14 Kalibr, is a land attack cruise missile with ranges from 1,500 to 2,500 kilometers, or about 932 to 1,553 miles. At full stretch, Grad could pound Odessa from the Caspian. Should that occur, the Kalibr-NK would tote a 450 kilogram, about 992 pounds. The standard variant uses high explosive, but per missile threat, it may carry nuclear yields. Grad's vertical launchers hold 8 Kalibr-NK rounds, yielding hefty firepower. Scrapping a platform able to unleash these counts as a major win for Ukraine, no matter the hit's location. The move not only erodes Russia's fleet, but curbs looming perils to Ukrainian cities like Odessa or Kyiv. RBC Ukraine reports, Grad belongs to a compact Russian squadron of missile and gunships tailored for coastal and inland ops. This River Sea class with guided missiles forms one of 12 Buyan-M hulls safeguarding Russia's inland maritime stakes. Beyond Kalibr cruise missiles, Grad can fire anti-ship rounds at naval foes, plus Tsirkon and Oniks cruise missiles, the latter from an 8-cell vertical system. The Oniks reaches about 600 kilometers with a 250 kilogram, about 551 pounds, warhead, while the hypersonic Tsirkon stretches to 1,000 kilometers at Mach 9 max speed. The ship also fields a twin-barreled Duet 30mm autocannon with 6 barrels, plus machine guns and twin rocket pods.
The Duet system fires at 10,000 rounds per minute, but serves mainly for close-in surface or air threats. Yet this class harbors a glaring flaw: scant air defenses. Grad's anti-air kit limits to shoulder-fired Igla or Verba missiles, woefully inadequate against distant drones or missiles. On October 4, the SSO exploited that. A missile ship built to hammer land targets and counter sea perils proved helpless against Ukraine's incoming drone or missile. The SSO landed its blow. Now, Grad and its formidable arsenal pose no further menace to anyone but Russia itself. This raid exposed profound gaps in Russian naval defenses, especially versus Ukraine's asymmetric threats.
The SSO's Grad strike landed as a heavy blow on a day Ukraine unleashed a barrage of fierce assaults on Russia, per Euromaidan press. Overnight, Ukraine also raided the Kirashin-Neftorg Syntez refinery in Russia's Leningrad region, adding to a string of refinery hits that have slashed Moscow's refining capacity by about 40% over recent months. This facility ranks among Russia's largest, with 18.4 million tons annual output. Losing it hammers Russian gasoline and diesel reserves. The raid deployed a salvo of Liutyi drones against key fuel tanks, igniting hours-long blazes that wrecked vital infrastructure.
On the same day as the Grad hit, Ukraine struck in Kursk as well. Per Euromaidan press, Ukraine's general staff confirmed downing a Russian Iskander ballistic missile launcher vehicle alongside a Garmin radar array. The Iskander-M reaches 500 kilometers with a 700 kilogram, about 1,543 pound warhead, while the Garmin radar detects and tracks aerial targets as a key Russian air defense node. Thus, October 4 proved a productive day for Ukraine. It also held strategic weight. As noted, Grad posed scant real danger to Ukraine, even with missiles able to reach Ukrainian zones from the Caspian, though those rounds would traverse vast distances and pierce Ukrainian air defenses to matter.
Ukraine's air defenses, featuring S-300 and Patriot batteries, have proven adept at intercepting Kalibr and Iskander missiles. Even so, bagging another Russian missile ship rates no small feat. Ukraine's Black Sea efficacy has forced Russia to nearly evacuate its fleet from there. 1/3 of the Black Sea fleet lies destroyed, the rest retreated to waters Moscow hopes prove safer. With that fleet effectively inoperative, per the Atlantic Council, Ukraine spied an opening. No need anymore to sink Russian ships in the Black Sea. Why not strike farther afield? What unfolds may herald a fresh Ukrainian strategy, targeting vessels beyond those directly menacing its soil. This could show Russia its entire navy lies in peril. Forget fretting over the Black Sea fleet. Worry about every hull within 1,000 kilometers of Ukraine's borders.
Russia's eroding naval might will see no rebound after the SSO's October 4 strike, nor from its evident helplessness against Ukraine's asymmetric playbook for tackling Russian warships. Defense Express argues Ukraine once again demonstrated its drones' potency against nearly all Russian deployed arms. Ukraine's light, smart, agile, and precise forces are inflicting outsized damage on a far mightier foe. Now Grad joins the roster of asymmetric strategy casualties. Per Deagle, the ship cost Russia about $70 million to build, a steep tab to lose to a Ukrainian drone or missile priced at a fraction.
If a $200,000 Liutyi drone indeed felled Grad, that yields Ukraine a 350-fold return on investment. Such cost-benefit ratios highlight Ukraine's mastery in wielding low-priced weapons for massive Russian losses.
Not bad for a nation with scant navy of its own. And this circles back to Grad's recency. The ship had operated mere years before Ukraine likely wrecked it. Painful falls short of capturing this naval gut punch. Devastating fits better, especially as Russia's shipbuilding reels from Western sanctions. Many Russian plans stall under these strictures' weight. On August 15, the Moscow Times reported Russia's state port operator, Rosmorport, canceled a $200 million contract with the Onega shipyard for 2 icebreakers.
This deal collapsed outright, with reported causes including non-stop construction delays since Putin's Ukraine invasion and the West's ensuing sanctions. Recall the name Onega? That's the lake where Ukraine struck Grad en route to the Caspian. Thus, the shipyard, named for and perhaps sited near that lake, couldn't deliver 2 vessels for which it stood to pocket $200 million. Bad news for Russia's navy, signaling depleted stockpiles and parts so dire that Putin's Arctic ambitions grind to a halt. Any hope of replacing Grad anytime soon when even icebreaker contracts get axed? Another yard faces turmoil. On August 16, UNN reported the Khabarovsk shipyard slashed its workforce by about 70%, down to roughly 90 hands. Clearly, a shrunken labor pool spells slower contract fulfillment, if any arrive. Layoffs partly stem from no fresh orders, as Russia lacks funds or materials to build ships now. Shortages span advanced electronics, once reliant on Western suppliers pre-sanctions. As noted up top, Russia's navy emerged defenseless after the SSO's Grad raid. This defenselessness cuts 2 ways. On one hand, it arises from Ukraine proving it can hit a Russian ship, even underway, from about 1,000 kilometers out. That vessel couldn't stop the Ukrainian strike, and likely nor could others in range. Thus, Russia's navy stands undefended in that Ukraine can assail from distances, forcing Moscow to shun risks near Ukrainian waters.
On the other hand, shipbuilding angles compound it. Paired with Western sanctions, Ukrainian strikes render Russia's navy defenseless through attrition. Each lost hull is one Russia can't promptly replace, and certainly not fast enough to prop up its shattered image as a top global fleet. Ukraine just showed it can tag a modern Russian warship with homegrown arms forged in years. Ponder what that signals to the West, aware its superior weapons could likewise sink Russian ships if pressed. Russia's navy may not vanish entirely, and perhaps never will, but it grows ever more impotent even as Putin fruitlessly menaces NATO. On financial tools, the October 4, 2025 strikes on Grad and other targets dealt Russia severe blows. Estimates peg Grad at $70 million in value, excluding costs for its Kalibr, Oniks, and Tsirkon missiles that could add tens of millions more. Factoring in Kirishi Nefteorg-Syntez refinery damages, where key infrastructure burned, Russia's one-day tab could hit hundreds of millions. The Kursk hit on the Iskander launcher and Garmin radar inflicted hefty costs too. An Iskander battery runs about $40 million, the Garmin around $10 million. Total financial hit from these raids may top $150 million, a steep sum for sanction and war-battered Russia. For Ukraine, executing them, say via $200,000 per unit Liutyi drones, costs peanuts versus the havoc, showcasing the asymmetric strategy's stellar efficiency. Drop a comment with number 1 if you back Ukraine, number 2 if you stand with Russia, or number 3 if you remain neutral.